Practical Anarchy, A Guide to Self-Determination, Dickie Dread. Chapter 1. The scariest word in the dictionary? Misconceptions and media. Why anarchy gets such a bad rap. If you want to see the word anarchy is treated, just skim a tabloid front page. Any riot, any busted window or burned bin, and the headline screams anarchy. Students march through London, chucking paint at Parliament, anarchy on the streets. Protesters glue themselves to roads, climate anarchy. Even when football fans kick off outside a stadium, it gets branded anarchy. It's lazy shorthand, but it works. The effect is simple. Keep repeating anarchy equals chaos, and pretty soon people believe it without thinking. The association becomes automatic. Say the word, most folk picture rioting, looting, smashed glass. Hardly anyone thinks of cooperating assemblies or communities living without rulers. But when you look closely, it's often the state that brings the chaos. A march might be noisy but calm until riot police charge with batons. Suddenly there's panic, fire, injuries, and the news calls it anarchy. The cause is neatly erased. The state creates disorder, then blames it on the absence of order. The media also use anarchist as a handy insult. Miners striking in the 1980s? Dangerous anarchists. Protest camps against road building in the 1990s? Anarchist extremists. Anti-capitalist marchers in the 2000s? Shadowy anarchists pulling the strings. The label works as a smear. It marks people out as reckless, outside the pale, not worth listening to. Whether or not they actually identify that way doesn't matter. Everyday language plays the same game. You hear people say, the kitchen's anarchy when dishes pile up, or the road's anarchy when the traffic lights go. It always means messy, disorganised, out of control. But look more closely. When traffic lights fail at a junction, do cars all crash? Not usually. Drivers slow down, wave each other through, make space. Informal rules kick in. For a brief moment, there's no external authority. Just people negotiating face to face, and it often runs smoother than when the lights work. That's the bit the dictionary never tells you. Festivals show it too. From the outside, a free party looks like chaos. Rigs set up in a field, no licence, no security. Councillors shake their heads and mutter anarchy. But inside, you'll see structure everywhere. Crews checking the jenny, fire points marked out, food shared, disputes settled by talking or moving people on. The order isn't imposed by police or managers. It's made by people there. Yet the outside world only sees noise and mud. The same word anarchy means disaster to them, but to many of us it means freedom. Echoes of Frisian freedom survive in regional identity and folklore, reminding us how deeply the memory of autonomy can persist even after political absorption. Films and pop culture pile in. Hollywood loves to show apocalyptic wastelands with anarchy scrawled in graffiti, biker gangs and warlords ruling the ruins. Punk bands shouted anarchy for shock value, and while that spread the word, it also welded it even tighter to images of violence and collapse. The myth became cultural common sense. No rulers means no safety, no order, nothing but destruction. But when institutions really do collapse, people rarely descend into chaos. Time and again, floods, fires, blackouts, it's neighbours who pull together. Volunteers run donation drives, strangers organise rescue boats, communities keep each other alive. Sociologists sometimes call it disaster utopia. That sudden burst of solidarity when the official systems fail. That's anarchy in practice, and no one on the news ever calls it that. The biggest misconception then is simply that anarchy equals no rules, but it doesn't. It means no rulers. A society without rulers still has agreements, customs, ways of sorting disputes, shared values. The difference is that they come from the bottom up, not from an office in Whitehall. Think about organising a gig with several bands. No authority, no police. Yet the show goes on because the sound engineers and band members enforce the rules themselves. Stop when your time's up, hand over fairly, argue a bit but carry on. No ruler, plenty of rules. This is why the language matters. If anarchy stays locked to chaos in the public imagination, then anarchist ideas never get a good hearing. They're dismissed before they're spoken. But once people see that they already live parts of their lives without rulers, in kitchens, games, traffic jams, festivals, disaster relief, the whole picture shifts. Anarchy stops looking like a nightmare and starts looking like something we already do, every day. Dictionaries, the state whispering through lexicographers. Dictionaries pretend to be neutral, but they're not. They're written by people who live in states, work for publishers, and soak in the same cultural soup as the rest of us. What they choose to put first and what they tuck away second tells you everything about how authority wants you to think. The Oxford English Dictionary. The Oxford English Dictionary does the usual two-step. First definition: a state of disorder due to absence or non-recognition of authority. Second definition: tucked away like a guilty secret. Absence of government and absolute freedom of the individual regarded as a political ideal. The ordering says it all. Start with fear, end with freedom. Anyone flicking the page sees chaos first, hope second. That's not neutral. That's the state whispering through the dictionary, teaching you what to feel before you've even thought about what the word might mean. Merriam-Webster. Merriam-Webster, the US version of the Oxford English Dictionary, plays the same game, only louder. First comes absence of government, then a state of lawlessness or political disorder, and finally, almost sheepishly, a utopian society of individuals who enjoy complete freedom without government. It's like ordering a sandwich: chaos, lawlessness, and if you're still hungry, a thin slice of utopia on the side. The framing teaches Americans that anarchy is dangerous before they even get to imagine it as desirable. La Ruse. La Ruse does its own dance. First definition: désordre résultant d'une absence ou d'une carence d'autorité. Disorder, pure and simple. Only later does it add the dry note: absence de gouvernement. The negative always comes first, the neutral trails behind. It's as if the French lexicographers wanted to reassure the state. Don't worry, we told them it's chaos before admitting it might just mean no rulers. Duden. Duden goes heavy. Gesetzlosigkeit, Herrschaftslosigkeit, Zustand Verlinger, Unordnung. Lawlessness, headlessness, state of complete disorder, absence of a ruling class. Then almost as an afterthought it adds a social order without domination of humans over humans. The contrast couldn't be sharper: total chaos or total equality. And once again, the chaos gets pride of place. The message is clear: you have to dig deep to find the liberating side of the word. Put them all side by side and you see the pattern. The first definition is always disorder. The liberating sense, freedom without rulers, equality without hierarchy, is shoved into second place or hidden behind technical language. For anyone flicking through, the takeaway is simple: anarchy equals chaos. And that's how the dictionaries do their quiet political work. Not by lying, but by arranging the truth so the fear comes first and the hope comes last. Beyond the West. Many words, same fears, hidden possibilities. Now, I can't pronounce half these words, so excuse me, and I apologise to people who speak those languages. If you only listened to Western dictionaries, you'd think anarchy was born in Greek classrooms and then got dragged through European language on its way back to punk record sleeves. But the truth's wider. The idea of living without rulers, or at least mistrusting the whole idea of rulers, shows up across cultures. Sometimes there's a word for it, sometimes not. Sometimes it's seen as chaos, sometimes as harmony. Arabic, fawda. In Arabic, the word most often used is fawda, usually translated as chaos, disorder or lawlessness. Turn on Al Jazeera during a riot and you'll hear it. Like English, the negative sense dominates. But if you step sideways into the world of Ibn Khaldun, the 14th century historian, you find something different. In his Muqaddimah, he describes how communities hold themselves together through asabiya, solidarity, without needing kings or sultans to micromanage. You can call it anarchy, but the principle's there. People bind themselves through social ties, not rulers' commands. Chinese, Wu Zeng Fu. In Chinese, the phrase for anarchy is Wu Zeng Fu, literally no government. Official dictionaries usually define it as disorder or chaos. But Taoist philosophy paints a different picture. Laozi's Tao Te Ching tells us that rulers who meddle too much wreck natural balance. The best leader is the one hardly noticed at all. Zhangzi, cheekier still, mocked laws and hierarchies as distractions from harmony. Western anarchists have long pointed to Taoism as a kind of proto-anarchism, a vision of order without bosses. It's not exactly the same, but the resonance is strong. India, Rajahinata. In Hindi and Sanskrit, Rajahinata means absence of king. Like in other languages, the dictionary sense leans negative, lawlessness, breakdown. But Gandhi turned it upside down. He wrote, "The ideally non-violent state will be an ordered anarchy." His Swaraj, self-rule, didn't mean rule by a new elite. It meant communities ruling themselves. For Gandhi, order didn't need a state. It needed responsibility shared by everyone. That idea shocked colonial rulers, who couldn't imagine power without hierarchy. Japan, Musefu. In Japanese, the dictionary meaning of Musefu is again absence of government, disorder. Yet by the early 20th century, Japanese radicals like Kotoku Shuzui were translating Kropotkin and Bakunin, and Musefu Shugi, anarchism, took on a new meaning, liberation from domination. The same word that a bureaucrat would use to mean mess became a rallying cry for freedom. Africa, acephalous societies. In Africa, colonial officers often wrote about anarchic tribes, by which they meant hard to govern. But anthropologists later saw it differently. Igbo communities in Nigeria, for example, made decisions in village assemblies, not through chiefs. Somali pastoralists relied on councils and negotiation. Middleton and Tate called these acephalous societies, literally headless. No central ruler, but plenty of order. The colonial eye saw mess. The anthropologist saw structure, anarchy in practice, if not in name. Indigenous Americas, refusing chiefs. When Spanish colonisers met stateless Amazonian peoples, they sneered that these groups lived in anarchy. They meant it as an insult, but Pierre Clastres flipped the script, arguing that many indigenous societies deliberately avoided centralised power. Refusing to appoint permanent chief wasn't a failure, it was a political choice. To live without rulers was to live freely. Zomia, the highland belt of mainland Southeast Asia, spanning parts of Vietnam, Laos, Thailand, Burma, India and China, offers a large-scale historical example of living beyond state capture. As James Scott argues, hill peoples used mobility, crop choices and refusal of census and taxation to remain state-evading, developing cultures of autonomy, precisely to avoid incorporation. A concise overview in La Vie des Idées describes Zomia as a long-standing frontier where state power had been partial and contested, underscoring the statelessness is not just theory but lived practice across millions. The medieval Frisians of northern Europe also provide an example of life without feudal overlords. Known as Frisian freedom, their system rejected serfdom and lordship, relying instead on assemblies of free farmers and a tradition of collective decision-making that lasted from the 11th to the 15th century. Although eventually absorbed into surrounding states, Frisian autonomy demonstrates that stateless self-organisation was not limited to distant regions but also existed within medieval Europe itself. What these strands show. Across cultures we find the same tension. Official dictionaries, often tied to states or empires, define anarchy as chaos. But in practice, people everywhere have built lives without kings, presidents, chiefs or bureaucrats. The forms vary. Solidarity in North Africa, Taoist harmony in China, Gandhi Swaraj in India, acephalous clans in Africa, consensus councils in Americas, but the same theme repeats: rules without rulers. And as Noam Chomsky has pointed out, anarchist principles are simply the conviction that the burden of proof is always on those who claim authority. That conviction isn't owned by the West. It shows up wherever people look at rulers with suspicion and decide they can manage themselves better. The danger is always the same. Rulers and their scribes write the dictionaries, and they define their absence as chaos. They often have the backing of popular media. But look from below, and what you see is community, cooperation, self-rule. Anarchy doesn't belong to one civilization. It's a thread running through human experience.